We continue today with Parshat Vayakhel, and I should have put into the note, and also then Parshat Pikudei as well, as we will have one last idea about Vayakhel and then move into Parshat Pikudei um, after after that. So one thing that's a lot of interesting things that, of course, happen, or a lot of repetition. But one of the interesting things that happens here is it talks about Boker Boker. It talks about the Jews bringing gifts every morning. They were kept on bringing gifts every single day, and they gave so many gifts. It says to us in Perek Lamed Vav that they gave so much that they had to say, we don't need any more. And Moshe, Vayaviru Kol B'machaneh, Moshe tells the people, you don't have to give up. We've had more than enough to be giving. But the Torah talks about Boker Boker. Every morning they're giving. And it's this beautiful sort of social contagion, or something we could say like that. You know, when you're in a place and people are doing bad things, then unfortunately people learn to do bad things. But where you're in a place and people are giving generously, enthusiastically, right? Remember, yesterday we talked about, and at the beginning of the Mishkan, Nasali Bo. This is all people who want to do these things. So, right, when we think about this, the beauty of when the social contagion is good, one person's generosity lowers the resistance for others. Giving becomes part of the social atmosphere and social construct. I don't know if it's a construct. And this is a rare and a beautiful, positive moment where this, one could say, this peer pressure takes over for the nation, and people are just giving and giving and giving, and this beautiful things that happens. And it's a beautiful moment for the Jewish people. It's not one that is always easily moved to, but again, we have to all read this, right? We have the command from God to build the Mishkan, and then all the vessels and how they're going to be. And then the Torah places the golden calf. And then this is the aftermath of the golden calf. And part of the aftermath, as we've stressed many times this week, part of the aftermath of the golden calf is it's much more about Bnei Israel bringing the materials and what they brought and how they brought, and showing that enthusiasm and showing that sort of that transformation where they brought the gold to the golden calf for, whether you want to call it idolatry or whatever you want to call it, some sort of rejection of God, and to now we have a complete redirecting of their bringing. They're not suppressing things. They're bringing it. They're bringing it voluntarily, and they're bringing it joyous, and that's going to allow God to reemerge back into living with Bnei Israel, even if it is somewhat different. Turning into Parshat Pikudei, we move into Parshat Pikudei. The key word here, of course, is Pikudei, and a few things about it. Pikudei brings in another person, Itamar. We talked about Betzalel. We've talked about Ohaliav. We know, of course, the main person in the Torah always is going to be Moshe Rabbeinu, and Aaron is going to be the high priest when the temple is going to be built. But we have a new person named here, which is Itamar. Itamar is a Levi, and he's in charge of sort of the accounting of the temple. And part of what it shows is the achievement of the temple is a collective achievement. We have Betzalel as the chief artisan, and Ohaliav, and in Parshat Vayakhel it talks about all the other people who they taught, who are helping them with their wisdom and their abilities to sew and to build and to craft. But we also have Itamar. The Mishkan is not built by a single person or a single hero. It requires administrators, it requires artisans, it requires accountants, it requires laborer. It's everybody is working together to achieve this great thing. It doesn't just come from one individual. The Torah is framing holiness as a product of collaboration, organized collaboration. Kedusha, God's presence, can come down when we have Moshe, with, you could say, the visionary. We have Betzalel, who is the artistic genius, as we said many times. Betzalel, who's sort of the mirror of God. We have administrators like Itamar. We have generosity. All people working together. So it's a wonderful idea about, just generally, about Vayakhel and Pikudei together. Let's get into some more details about Pikudei. So Pikudei begins, Ele Pikudei HaMishkan, Mishkan HaEdut. This is the Mishkan of the Edut, of the testimony. Why is it called Mishkan HaEdut is one of the questions that's commonly asked. We have it in other places. It's also called the Luchot HaEdut. And one of the answers that's given is that the fact that the Mishkan was built is testimony to the idea that God forgives the Jewish people after the Chet HaEgel. We know initially God does not want to forgive them. Why? God wants to destroy them. But Moshe, of course, intercedes, steps in, talks to God, does not want the nation to be from himself. And if you need the proof, well, here is the proof. The Edut, the testimony, the proof is that the Mishkan is here. So the Mishkan itself is the demonstration of the reconciliation, is the demonstration that the Mishkan is not just a sanctuary, it's also evidence of a repaired relationship. The Luchot are also called the Luchot HaEdut, and we can see that as well. There's the first Luchot and there's the second Luchot, both of the Luchot, right? They are the Luchot HaEdut. They're also testimony that God gives the second pair of the Luchot, the second set of the Luchot, as we talked about days or last week, right? The second Luchot are slightly different. Moshe has to carve the stones. God writes on the second Luchot, but it's a demonstration again that God has fixed the relationship with the Jewish people. I go back to what we said the other day about Masechet Gitin. Masechet Gitin has the stories of the destruction of Second Beit Hamikdash, all the Agadot about it. But it's in Gitin, and there's Machzir Grushato. A person can get divorced, a couple can get divorced, but they can get back together. We have the destruction of the temple, but that's not the end of the relationship between God and the Jewish people. The relationship remains, and the return is always there, is always possible, as Moshe is going to talk about later on in the Torah, in Parsha, in Sefer Devarim, the return of the Jewish people to God and God's return towards the Jewish people. We see it already here. The Mishkan HaEdut, the Luchot, which are Edut, all of these things, the Aron HaEdut, these things are testimony showing that the relationship is not broken. And we think about what later, Christianity and other religions that said that, right? The Jews, the relationship between God and the Jewish people is broken. There's the new Hebrews, there's the new this. That's not our belief. One of the most important ideas in the Torah is the idea of tshuva, the idea of repentance, the idea of return, the idea that a relationship can be fixed. It's not always fixed. And that's part of what we have here, I believe, from placing the Egel Hazav story right there in the middle. In a very similar notion, Rashi says a similar thing with the idea. It says, Ele Pikudei HaMishkan, Mishkan HaEdut. Why doesn't it just say, Ele Pikudei HaMishkan HaEdut, or Ele Pikudei Mishkan HaEdut? Why does it have to say HaMishkan, Mishkan? Why is the double language? And Rashi says that what is being hinted to here is the temple would later be taken as collateral twice. Right? There are going to be two Batei Mikdash, not just this Mishkan, which eventually is going to make it into Israel, eventually is going to be in Shiloh, is going to sit in Shiloh, according to the rabbis, for about 370 years or so until it is destroyed during the time of Eli and Shmuel as a young man. But this refers to the two Batei Mikdash, according to Rashi, and it has a similar idea. Israel will sin, but what's going to be taken away is not Bnei Israel. It's going to be the sanctuary. It's going to be the mikdash. The mikdash is going to be destroyed. And the mikdash, it symbolizes the closeness of God and the Jewish people, and it symbolizes, or foreshadows a future exile. But ultimately, what it demonstrates again is the relationship. There is a rupture, but it's not destruction. The Jewish people will still be there. There'll be destruction of the first Mikdash. There'll be the destruction of the second Mikdash. We will be exiled. It will be very difficult, but it's not as if the relationship between God and the Jewish people is over. The relationship is still there. Now, one of the groups that's mentioned here with Itamar, the accounting and the accounting that's being done is specifically the Leviim. And the Leviim, while they may not have been the artisans or the artists or the craftsmen, it's not clear exactly. But one thing that they certainly are is very important in the Mishkan, because they are going to be the people who have to go and have to transport the Mishkan in the desert. They're the ones who have to handle all of the components, take it apart, carry it. And so they have to know exactly what exists and how much there is. Right? If you're the person who's I don't know, building the furniture, right? You need to know how many screws you have, how many bolts you have, how many nuts you have. So it's not just an inventory that's going on here under Itamar, but it's also necessary for the portable sanctuary to be there. Today it's easy, right? You put a piece of furniture together, maybe you have to take it apart, you have to move it, you have to this, you have to that. Generally today, maybe perhaps with the help of AI agents, you can go and you can you can find the instructions. But back then, you couldn't find the instructions. But so it's important here that really the Leviim are very instrumental here in the accounting and knowing how much of the pieces they're going to be for the Mishkan. Now we have a little bit of a transition when we talk about going from Vayakhel to Pikudei. Vayakhel was much more about the artist, the artisan. Pikudei is very different. Pikudei means an accounting. So it's much more the numbers, the measurements, the total. It's like a financial ledger, as it were. And the shift, highlights that sacred institutions require not only inspiration, not only great artists, not only great thinkers, but they also need, record keeping, and they need administration. They need to make sure that we know what is necessary, how much is being done. And that's sort of, we could say, in a sense, the Torah is moving from original inspiration and from implementation to accounting and details therein. The devil is often in the details, but also the Torah has this great understanding that details are important. Halacha is very much about details. And if we think about just Pikudei as accounting and it's numbers, and we think about the Mishkan in general, the Mishkan project back in the beginning of Parshat Truma, it began with accounting. It began with I shouldn't say the beginning of Truma, but at least the Kitisa has this census. It begins with a counting of the half shekel that everybody has to give. And Pikudei, the materials are counted. And so you could say in some ways that it's framed by different forms of counting, the counting of people and the counting of materials. And the Mishkan, right? You need the materials, but what you need more than that is you need the people as well. And so we have here different notions of the accounting that's going on and moving to the counting. And we'll talk more about the word Pikudei, but something that to think about, and we'll come back to it tomorrow, is we have this word Pikudei becomes an important word in Sefer Breshit at the end, and used much, much more in Sefer Shmot. The end, you guys can think about, we'll talk more about it, but the end, the last or second, I think it's the second to last verse of Sefer Breshit is where Yosef says to his brothers, I am going to die, but God is going to remember you. And he says, Pakod yifkod Elohim etchem, God is surely going to remember you, and makes them take an oath to bring his bones out of Egypt, not to leave him there. The end of Breshit has this idea of Pikudei. The end of Shmot has this idea of the Pikudim of the Mishkan. The end of Breshit has the Aron. Yosef is buried in an Aron, which means a coffin. And the end of Shmot has this Aron and this ark. And we'll think about that a little bit. We'll talk about it more tomorrow, but there's certainly literary hints. I think we talked about a little bit at the beginning of Shmot, the literary ideas that connect Shmot to Breshit. And we'll talk more about that come tomorrow with some of this word Pikudei and some of the literary stuff that's going on here with end of Breshit, end of Shmot, Yosef, Moshe, and Aaron, etc., a little preview, a little cliffhanger that we'll continue with come tomorrow.